Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Chairman. So this is a board game related Q&A session where you can ask me anything you like about board games. Now, as usual, thank you to everybody who has submitted questions for this episode. Without those questions, I can't continue doing this. So if you want to keep the series going, please be sure to leave your questions in the comments below and I'll answer them on the next episode. Now, before I get started on the questions, as usual, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get a 5% off your first order. But let's start with the questions, and we're going to start with questions from Mr. J. Marzetti, who has asked, what are my my top 5 Istari games? So I'm probably going to do a video ranking these games, but I'll just read out the games so you know what they are, but in no particular order. And you'll probably see some of them over my left shoulder here. We have Sulla, we have Kalis, we've got Assyria, Mirmes, Ys is another fantastic one. And also I'll mention Spirium as well. So there are 6 there. And again, I'll probably in the future do a ranking video of all the Istari games that I've played. He's also asked, do I have any favourite board game artists? Yeah, I suppose I do. Familiarity, I like artists like Dennis Lauhausen, artists like Clemens Franz, because that connection between a lot of my favourite games and that art is so strong. But I do like some other artists, particularly I really enjoy the artwork of Weberson Santiago. He's made some really kind of eerie, creepy, cartoony style art, which I really like. And of course, the more predictable artists like Vincent Dutray, I think is immensely talented. So I do like the way all their games look. He's also asked, am I going to any conventions this year? That question was asked quite a few months ago, so I won't go to any more conventions this year. I did not go to Essen. Of course, I did not go to Gen Con. The only conventions I tend to go to are the UK Games Expo, in June every year, in the UK, of course. And sometimes I go to one called DevCon, which is in Exeter, in the UK as well. But I've never been to a convention overseas, and I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. But thank you for the questions. Keith has asked, how important is art and component quality to me? I would say, to a reasonable extent. It's certainly not going to be a game breaker for me. I know a lot of board gamers, it's make or break when it comes to the artwork and design. And it can raise the kind of rating of a game several points. For me, it's gameplay at the forefront of everything. Yes, the extra nice artwork, nice production is going to, it's going to be a nice luxury to have. But again, it's not a game breaker unless it's completely unplayable due to the component quality. I'm generally quite happy. So yeah, probably less so than most board games, I would say. He's also asked, and this is a good question, would I ever rate a game a 10 based purely on the fun factor of a game? And I had to think about that a bit, and I actually don't think I would. If I think a game is immensely fun, but maybe there's not much to it. For example, games like Telestration spring to mind. I think the game is amazing, and I probably never had more fun playing a game. But ultimately, it's just drawing on a dry erase board and drawing rude pictures. Is that going to be a 10 out of 10? Maybe for fun factor it should be, but for for gameplay mechanisms, etc., I don't feel right in myself to give that a 10. So for me, the 10 out of 10 games are the ones that not only have the fun factor, they have the clever mechanisms to support that as well. So I'll still rate it very high. Telestrations is an 8 out of 10 for me, but ultimately it's just drawing on a dry erase board. So I don't think I would, but maybe I could be proved wrong someday. I'm not sure. He's also asked, what is my tolerance for take that in board games? Over time, my tolerance has actually increased. I'm a lot less sensitive now to take that than I was. But for me, there are so many different categories of take that. There's meanness in games. There are times when you have to be quite aggressive to opponents. But as long as that is to benefit myself, I don't really see that as take that. For me, the kind of take that I cannot really swallow, that I don't like at all, is when you are just targeting someone for no real reason and destroying something they've built. And some Euro games will have cards in saying, steal resources from a player of your choice. Why am I choosing that player? Well, I don't know, maybe they're winning, something like that. That for me doesn't feel quite right. And yeah, never really a good feeling for me to use abilities like that or have them done to me either. So it's a very particular type of take that I don't like, but everything else I can generally take. But thank you for the questions, Keith. Till, thank you for all your questions. You've sent a ton of them. I'm not going to answer them all on this episode, so I'm going to answer 6 of them, I believe. And I'll be sure to answer the remaining ones on the next episode. But thank you so much. Without your questions, I couldn't do videos like this. So Till has asked, his first question is, what is my biggest old game discovery for gameplay and mechanisms? So old, I'm not quite sure what you meant by that, but a mechanism from an older game that's certainly not new, that really stood out for me recently is the money allocation mechanism in a game called Pergamon. It's a very cool mechanism that I've never seen used before, where you have an uncertified amount of money, but you know the vague kind of boundaries of that money, and you are putting your meeple on this time track saying which order you're going to take money from the bag from. The earlier you go, the kind of smaller amount of money you'll take, but you're guaranteed that money, where later you could be being a bit greedier, but all the money could have run out of the bag by the time it gets to you. Absolutely love that mechanism. It is fantastic. So that is definitely the game that popped into my head when this question was asked. He's also asked, what is an older game that struck me as the most original? I think the Tower of Babel was very original. You know, again, an older game by Dr. Rainer Knizia. An area control style game, but you are trying to build these different wonders of the world by using these cards. But when you nominate to build one of these wonders, all the other players can put forward an amount of cards, and you can either accept the cards to help you contribute to build it, which will kind of add towards this area control part of the game, or every card you reject gives them a victory point. And it really is a bit of a plate spinning exercise to see, you know what, I don't really want to reject 5 cards because I'm going to give you 5 points. But if I don't do that, you're going to get all of the area control there. So it's a really interesting game, and again, I've never seen that mechanism used before. He's asked, which older game hits the table most often for me? I have quite a few of them. Some I've written down here are Manhattan, a game that goes back to the 1990s. I play it very regularly, very simple area control game that's super easy to play and fast. Ingenious, another Knizia game. Vikings, I play a lot. And you know, one of my favourite games of all time, Ra, hits the table all the time. Again, going back to the late 1990s for that one. He's asked, do I have any or know of any infinitely replayable games that are not abstract games or cannot be small card games? There aren't many of them, but a couple I've mentioned here are Trois. I think Trois, especially if you have the expansion, the amount of variability is huge, and they change the game a lot as well with these different cards you're using. So every game feels massively different. And also one that definitely I think is the most replayable game that I've ever had in my collection, I don't have it anymore, ironically, is Legendary, the Marvel deck building game. So this game has like 20 expansions, so many different modes you can play, tons, I think hundreds of characters, hundreds of villains, and again the gameplay does feel very different depending on which characters you use. And you know, if you use some kind of random generator, you will never play the same game twice. So yeah, that one is just off the charts with replayability. He's also asked, what are the top games with a strong game arc or sense of escalation? As I mentioned before, I think Legendary did a great job of managing the game arc, because somehow, almost cinematically, every single game of Legendary would have this kind of flow where you start getting battered by the mastermind, you would get very close to the brink of destruction, you're very nearly losing the game. The tide would start to turn as your deck would get slightly stronger, and then ultimately you'd either kind of come to that final, crucial point where you're going to win the game or you're not. So I think almost every game of Legendary would play very cinematically and had a great game arc. Also, Rumble Nation as a simpler one. Great sense of escalation as you're deploying your troops on the map and watching them all resolve and cascade into each other to resolve all those different areas. And also I think Condottiere has a great sense of escalation, as you're managing that hand of cards. You don't get to refresh your cards every every round. You have to manage them quite carefully, knowing which battles to pick, knowing when to commit, knowing when not to commit. As the board populates, you know which areas you know are must win and you can't afford to lose. So I definitely think the tension rises strongly in Condottiere. And the final question of Teal's for this episode, he's asked, what are, or do I have any recommendations for top intro games, but with substance? And there are a ton of them out there. I don't think substance has anything to do with how light the game is, to be honest. There are some very light games that have tons of nuances and depth that you can explore. I think First Rat is a great one. Is it an intro game? I think so. Maybe on the brink. It does have a few extra rules. But First Rat's a good one. Ingenious, very easy to play, but there are some spatial elements you need to manage. And just a smaller card game that I wanted to mention is Nemalia. Very simple drafting and puzzly style game. There's a massive brain burner, but still rule set, easy as can be. Anybody can play it, but playing it well is going to be definitely a mental strain. So that is Nemalia. But thank you so much for your questions, Till. Again, I'll answer the remaining ones in the future episodes. Sacco has asked, am I a game collector or just a gamer? I'm a gamer. I don't really have any emotional attachment to these games. I don't really like collecting them. I like having the smallest collection as possible, but there are so many good ones out there that I need to have quite a big collection. But yeah, I'm happy to sell anything really. I've had great games that I've sold because they're not getting played. I've had a very rare games in my collection before that I've sold. I've sold games like Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation, games like Zhanguo, Nippon. Yeah, very rare games that I've had that I don't have anymore, which would really, well, people would love to have some of these games in their collection, which I got rid of quite, without any hesitation really. He's also asked, what are my thoughts on new editions of games that are already in print? I'm kind of indifferent really. It's a commercial business. If these companies think that a new printing is going to make them money, then why not? For me personally, and that's all I can control, if I'm happy with an existing edition of a game and a new one comes out, then I'm more than happy to keep my original one if it satisfies me enough. I know games that I have in my collection are coming out. Games like Kalamala are getting a reprint soon. Games like Kraftwagen are getting a reprint soon. I'll probably keep my original. Same goes with Brussels 1893. All getting reprints. I've got all the originals, and I don't really feel like I need to own the new ones. But to be fair, those games are out of print. But even games like Castles of Burgundy, 2 new editions have come out since the one I've had, and I don't really feel the need to replace it because mine's absolutely fine. So yeah, I'm not really bothered by it because it doesn't really affect me too much. But thank you, Sacco. Tony has asked, do I ever use components of a game that I own as a proxy to play games that I don't own? Now, I think I've done this a few times before. Now, the only one I think I have in my collection at the moment is that I do use the Mysterium components to play Dixit. So a very easy one. The cards are very similar, but you can actually use the other bits and bobs to to track things as well. So yeah, that's a very easily proxy. You can play Dixit with the Mysterium components. I'm sure there are others that I've done, but I can't think of any that spring to mind immediately. He's also asked, who do I target to sell my cold games to? Basically, I just put them on Facebook groups, and then post them off to whoever needs them. You're getting them straight to who they want to go to. Tons of board games, you can see them within 5 minutes, and it'll generally sell pretty quickly if you price them fairly. If I got something that I think is worth a bit more and has a bit more of a specialist buyer, I might put it on eBay because it's probably going to attract someone who wants that particular game. And he's also asked, do I worry that we'll run out of questions for this series? Not really. I mean, I don't worry. Worry is quite a strong word, but will I run out of questions? Quite possibly. If I do, no problem. We'll just stop the series and maybe start it up again later. But right now, you guys are doing a great job of getting the questions in. And I don't want to do these too often. I'm keeping them once every other month or so to give it enough time to breathe. So, but hey, who knows? If I don't get any questions for this video, the series will be over and that's it really. So, it is what it is. Brett has asked, if I designed a game, what would inspire it, or would innovation be my main goal? Interesting question, and I have designed a few games that I've played around with, definitely not gotten published. I've got some prototypes basically. To be honest, being inspired purely by innovation for me is a bit of I think you'd be chasing your tail a bit. I think reaching for innovation isn't necessarily going to get you a great result because you're just being innovative for the sake of it, I suppose. You want to have innovation that's good. I think quality is what inspires me. I want to make a good game, and ironically, as I'm not a very thematically driven gamer. Doesn't really bother me. But a lot of things I think about when designing games, or when I think about designing games, are thematic ties. I might see a subject that's not really been explored in board games, and I think, well, this mechanism would actually, link quite well with that game style or that theme. So, weirdly enough, I think theme would inspire me more than anything, and maybe some different themes that have not really been seen before, would be the catalyst of me designing a game. So, yeah, that's the answer, Brett. Thank you for the question. So, it'd probably be theme more than anything else. Board Game Fangirl has asked, are the games from my favourite designers Instab Buys, no matter the style? No, but there are games like designers like Stefan Feld. I've played pretty much all of his games, and I probably will play all his games yet to come out. But he makes a very particular style of game. If, say, someone like Stefan Feld said, I'm going to release a trading card game, I'm not going to play it. I've got no interest in playing trading card games, even if it is from someone like Stefan Feld. So, in a pure literal sense of the question, the answer is no. But is it realistic that Stefan Feld is going to come out with a trading card game? No, it's not. So, generally speaking, I'm pretty sure that every Stefan Feld game that's come out is going to be an Instab Buy for me. But yeah, as a literal sense, the answer is no. Thank you for the question. Alan87 has asked, how will Eurogames evolve over the next few years? Obviously, a very difficult question to answer there. I have a feeling like the more complex, fiddly Euros of the last few years are going to get toned back a bit, and they're going to pull back into the more accessible style of Euro that publishers such as De Vere are putting out at the moment, because they're making smaller box Euros that are attractive, more simple mechanically, and I suppose have a wider audience. Games like the Red Cathedral and the White Castle have done very well commercially. I think maybe games like that are going to be are going to be the kind of focus for the next few years. Do I see any major innovations in Euro games coming out over the next few years? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a continued refinement, and I'm cherry picking from different games to make new ones, because Euro games have been done to exhaustion, and it's very difficult to do anything new without adding more in. But now people are adding so much more in, they're getting a bit, it's hard to play these games because they're so heavy and hard to learn, and there are so many of them. I think it's going to be a tone back to the kind of yesteryear of simpler Euro games, but with a fresh lick of paint, nicer to look at. Because for me, all the best Euro games are ones that were 20 years old or so. They're not to everybody's taste in terms of the look of them, because they do look that beige, drab style, colonists going around in boats and trading resources. That's not really the style at the moment. It's going to be more anthropomorphic animals and pirates and all this kind of stuff. So, I think it's going to be the older style of game rehashed with a new fresh lick of paint. Bradley has asked, what games do I sleeve and why? I pretty much don't sleeve anything. I only have a few games in my collection that are sleeved, and that's normally because I bought them second hand and they are already sleeved. The only games that I would insist on sleeving are games or kind of hidden traitor, social deduction style games. I'll definitely sleeve those, because of course a nick on a card can be the difference between the game being playable or not. That's the only reason I'd really sleeve a game. I don't really see the need, to be honest. He's also asked, do I buy storage solutions? No, I never ever have bought a storage solution. Any of the kind of folded space ones, anything like that. I've never ever felt the need to get one. They're very expensive. Sometimes, half as expensive or even as expensive as the game itself, which to me is just ludicrous. I've got no issue at all with just plastic snap bags. Get the components in there, put them in the box, and I'm good to go. So no, I haven't. And he's also asked, are there any essential expansions for me? Now, I don't want to go too much into this because I have got a top 10 brewing of a top 10 expansion video, or top 10 essential expansions. But the one that always pops to mind, and spoiler alert, this will probably be high on that video, is the Arthur expansion for Merlin. I think it makes an average game pretty good. So, I don't know if you know Arthur, it's Merlin, it's a rondel style Steffenfeld game that's very polarizing, but I think with the expansion, I think a lot of people will find it a lot more palatable because the decision space is pretty much doubled, and the complexity doesn't go up too much, and it's just a very well done expansion to make, for me, a good game great, but a lot of people think it'd make an okay game good. So that's my kind of go-to essential expansion that I normally talk about. Richard has asked, have I ever heard or checked out the Bones Collectors videos? No, I don't know who they are. I'll be sure to check them out because apparently their tastes are quite similar to mine. Jankoku has asked, am I excited for the Age of Innovation game, which is the kind of the newer version of Terra Mystica? I'm not excited for it because I have Terra Mystica in my collection already. I'm far from an expert on Terra Mystica. I've not played it that many times. I need to play it way more and familiarise myself with it. So I think I've got a lot more exploring to do with Terra Mystica before I move on to this one. And I think, I think Terra Mystica is a great game anyway. And a bit like the other question, I'm more than satisfied with that game. So why do I need another version of it? Unless it's that much better. But I've heard it's a bit more complex, which is a bit of a red flag for me because Terra Mystica is kind of on the border of what I'm comfortable with in terms of game's complexity and game length as well. So anything more than that is just not going to get played in my collections, unfortunately. But I'm sure it's really good. I've heard it's excellent. But yeah, probably not one that I'm going to pick up myself anytime soon. Gary has asked, what are my thoughts about game group members refusing to play light games? That's a bit of an awkward situation to be in, I suppose, and it all depends on the power dynamic. If there's a group of 4 of you, 3 of you are happy to play the light game and 1 isn't, then screw them, play with the 3 of you and they can just watch. But if it's the other way around, you want to play the light game, they all don't, then I'm afraid you're going to have to take it on the chin and give your game up and play what they want to play. So yeah, for me, I'll play anything as long as you play anything I put to the table as well. He's asked, following up from that, he put, is it rude and should they just play? I don't know if it's rude. I don't know if it's rude at all. Maybe it is, maybe it's not cordial. Again, I would say play their game, they can play your game. You can't just have it your way all the time. And he's also asked, have I ever said no to a game myself? Yes, I have, but not when it's the only option. If we go to a games night, there's a couple of tables going on, somebody's playing a game that I'm not too keen on there, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to play that one, I want to play this one instead. But again, even if it's a game I don't like, someone's brought it to a games night and they really want to play it, I'll say, yeah, of course I'll play it, because they're going to play a game that they might not be too keen on, that belongs to me a bit later. So again, it's all about give and take, and you have to work with the people you're playing with, of course, and you're not always going to have it your own way. But again, if it's the only option, then I've not said no. But if there are several options, then I have said no. So thank you for the questions, Gary. Yeah, definitely have good questions there. Edward has asked, do my workmates know about my hobby and that I have a board game channel? I think most of them do. I've had a few people ask about it, very politely, inquisitively asked about my hobby, because I think a lot of people don't realise how big board gaming is now, or how many different types of games are out there, and they have kind of nostalgic views on when they were younger, when they used to play games with their family. So they're quite curious about what the hobby is now, and they've always been completely polite about it. So yeah, I've never had an issue there, and yeah, I'm not shy about it. I don't actively share it with people, but if they ask what my hobbies are, I will tell them. And Fleazap has asked, what are my favourite easy to teach but difficult to master games? A great question, and again, I have got a top 10 video brewing with this one, so I don't want to say 10 games here. I'm going to give a couple that will probably feature on that top 10 list. War Chest, a game that I played semi-recently. Simple mechanically, genius abstract style game with tons of nuances. Even Ra, I think Ra is a very deceptive game where you might think at first, well, I'm just going to use my biggest bid chips to get the best lots. Yes, that's the idea, but the delicacy and the intricacies of Ra and playing it well, I think are very apparent the more you start to play it. And I think probably maybe one of the strongest examples of this question is Hanamakoji. So Hanamakoji is another game that could mislead you thinking it's quite random and not really having much control. But if you play someone who is very seasoned and experienced with Hanamakoji, they will read the board state very carefully and have an intuition about the game and how to play it optimally. So, Hanamakoji is a game that I went on a weird journey with because I played it so many times with the same opponent. We were kind of terrible at first. We got better and better and better to a point where we were playing to a very high level, I thought, where the smallest mistake would cost you. And I've not played it for a while now, and all my skills have completely depreciated, and I feel like I'm back at square one, which makes me feel like Hanamakoji is a difficult game to master because you need to stay with it and keep on playing the game to maintain your skills. But great question there. Thank you, Flea Zap. So that is all the questions, okay, apart from some of the ones that Till asked, which I will answer on the next episode. But thank you so much for submitting these, some really fantastic questions there. And again, I want to stress, if you want to keep the series going, please be sure to ask some additional questions in the comments section of this video, and I will answer them on the next video. But thank you for tuning in again. Thank you again for the questions. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.